welcome to another week of the Reformed and Charismatic podcast. We've got another guest this week. He's a pastor. I'm gonna add him in here. Pastor Brandon Lansdown, and you're from Missouri, right?
Yeah, Springfield, Missouri, in the southwest corner of the state.
Cool. Hey, well, thanks for coming on, man. So, just to start off, do you want to just maybe tell us a little bit about yourself? I already said that you're a pastor, but if there's other stuff you want to say, married, kids.
Yeah, I've been married for 24 years to my high school sweetheart. We have two kids, a daughter who's 21, just recently married in October, and a son who's 18, who's still here at the house with us. And pastor a church that we started out of another church not quite 2 years ago. Been in ministry for probably 20 going on 21 years. And so I spend my time with my family and pastoring a church. And then my wife and I own, and she handles the business side, the business management side of Reformation Coffee. And I do the roasting along with training my son to do the same.
Right on, man. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna offend you, but I got Seattle's best here this morning.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's the cheaper one at the store, so prices
Okay.
lately,
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. I need to try Reformation Coffee though, so.
We'd be happy for you too. That's what I'm drinking when my fellow Carter tumbler here.
Where do you get the beans from?
I've got two distributors, two suppliers. One's that I don't use as much anymore, just because it takes longer to get it, is in Oakland, and the other is down in Mississippi. And so they both have relationships with farms in country, and hand select their beans, and then I get to select from them what I want.
Right on. You said Oakland is one of them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's semi close to where I'm at. I'm in Central Valley of California, so close to Fresno. I actually work in Fresno, but Oakland's probably a 3-hour drive.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's kind of crazy. How'd you get connected with them out there?
Well, that's who I've been with the longest, and that's who I used to buy off of just for myself personally when I was learning to roast. And I started to do research on coffee roasting and where to find raw coffee beans. That was the place that I discovered that's really probably one of the better known and larger companies that provides raw coffee. And so, I just discovered them through research and connected with them. And like I said, I don't use them nearly as much. I've been given a pretty good partnership with this company down in Mississippi, and the pricing is a little bit better, and more than that, though, the shipping is lightning fast. So I can get raw coffee beans from them pretty quick, usually within a couple of days. Whereas from Oakland, it's a bigger company. It takes, usually 3 or 4 days just to process my order, and then maybe a week to get it to me.
Cool. Well, yeah, man, it's been fun interacting with you on Twitter and stuff, which is where I saw your, post originally. Also, you're a metalhead, which is,
That's right.
what I am too. So that's been kind of
Excellent.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I've been listening to metal since since I was a kid. My dad raised me on Pantera, Metallica, so
Yeah, I'm the same way. I didn't really have anybody that was introducing me to it. I don't really recall for sure how I discovered metal. I was a kid. I was listening to Metallica, and kind of cut my teeth on Ride the Lightning and the Black Album. Would fall asleep listening to the Black Album. So so yeah, then then Christian metal kind of came on the scene, and turned into only kind of Christian metal. And then now, we have a lot of metal bands that are unashamedly, unapologetically Christian that I like to listen to a lot.
Yeah. That, like, Christian metalcore scene that, like, exploded, like, right there, like, the early 2000s, like, I really got into that stuff, like, especially a lot of the Face Down Records bands,
Hmm.
like Sleeping Giant, Pending Doom
Yeah,
was part of that,
Penny Zoom. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I got to see them. I think it was called, like, the Scream the Prayer Tour or something. They came over here to, like, Bakersfield, and that was an insane show, like, with Blood Comes Cleansing, I think was on there. I don't know if you ever listened to them. Yeah.
I have. Yeah, that's pretty intense music.
Yeah, yeah. But, anyways, yeah, man, so the reason why I wanted to have you on was, you announced on this last, Reformation Day
Hmm.
that you were a Reformed Baptist, which, you believe or you held to believers' baptism or credo baptism, as it's called, and made the switch to paedobaptism or infant baptism. So I just wanted to ask you, like, how that came about, like, why the change of mind? I recently also came to that within the last year, so, yeah, I think it's good to share it.
Yeah. Well, I grew up a Baptist. I grew up a Southern Baptist. Pretty much my whole life. Attended Southern Baptist college, not far from where I am now, and got my degree in Christian ministry and biblical studies, and served in various ministry roles as a Southern Baptist. And initially, uh, well, during my college days was when I was introduced to the doctrines of grace or Calvinism, and took a little bit of time, but came to understand and accept that as uh, the right or biblical view of soteriology, salvation, God's sovereignty in that, and really from there just continued to reform in my theology. And so, uh, to keep it brief and not necessarily in any particular order, just continued to reform. And so became confessional and became creedal, and held to 1689 London Baptist Confession. Considered myself really kind of a 1689 Federalist guy, and had read a lot of those guys out there, Renahan, Barcelos, Pascal Denal, and was just learning and growing in that understanding. And then I moved from Amill to post mill, and moved from complementarianism to biblical patriarchy, and adopted the regulative principle of worship. And so then I guess kind of the last or most recent uh, piece to fall in place was covenant theology. So like I had said, I had read all of the, not all, but all of the kind of the main reads in regards to the Baptist perspective of covenant theology, and even the Baptist perspective of the opposing side. So reading a lot of a lot of explanations from Baptists of the understanding of the paedobaptist position, and was pretty comfortable in that spot. Really thought I had a pretty good understanding of it. And in the church that we started, uh, began preparing to teach through covenant theology in Sunday school, and I was having a lot of conversations on the side with guys regarding this topic, and realized that I read a lot of dead theologians who were paedobaptists. I read them. I do read them regarding all sorts of topics, but not that one. And so I just decided to begin to dive in and to read the things that they actually said themselves that they believed. And it really kind of started with I was trying to figure out some things in terms of practice in our church regarding the Lord's Supper. And so I read um, uh, John Bunyan's, I don't remember the name of it, but it's a treaty that he wrote on not barring baptism, or not, excuse me, not barring the Lord's table based upon baptism. So then that led me into his relationship with John Owen, who was a paedobaptist, and then just kind of kept drilling down from there and started reading, like I said, reading works from paedobaptists regarding the covenant, and wasn't really seeking to accept it. Just wanted to have a better understanding of it, and in the process came to see it, and um, you know, not really hesitantly, but I understood it and accepted it, and decided that like it or not, I think this is what I discovered, and so I'm going to believe it and profess it. That's kind of how I came to it.
All right, yeah. Yeah, for me, I was in like the Calvary Chapel movement, if you know they are, and so they're heavily believers baptism. That's what I was raised on. Although at one point we did attend a church that was a reform. Well, they were like a MacArthur type, like all the pastors went to like masters and whatnot. But they're believers baptism too. And then I got involved with another movement that came out of Calvary Chapel that was more Calvinistic, but still kind of like held to some of the charismatic side of things too. Um, yeah, and then, man, I remember, like, one of my friends, he was getting ready to go down to, Westminster Seminary down there in Escondido, and he was going to, like, a PCA church down there, and we just had this, like, big old, like, discussion about infant baptism, and I was just like, "It's ridiculous," like, "You have to be a believer, like, it's an outward sign of an interchange," like, all the language. And he's just trying to tell me about, like, covenant theology, and I honestly, at the time, just didn't really care to listen to it. But man, I think the conversation started, so we were at a church over here where we moved to in Visalia, and my daughter, who was, like, 6 at the time, she's now 7, they were watching the baptisms happening, and she wanted to get baptized, and I was like, "Well, I mean, are you prepared for that? Like, are you a Christian?" She's like, "Well, of course I'm a Christian. Like, you guys are Christians. Like, we go to church every Sunday, we read the Bible together, I pray." I was like, "Okay." Like, and she's like, "I do all the Christian things that you guys do, so why wouldn't I be baptized?" And I was kind of like, "All right." Like, that was kind of like the first thought. And then I came across somebody on Twitter who it was just some random person. I don't remember who it was, but they quoted First Corinthians 10, 2, and it was, "And all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea, and all ate the same spiritual food." And that phrasing all, and I was kinda like, "Oh, man," like, he's equating this to them going through the Red Sea, and there was, like, everybody in there, including children. And I had heard the household, too, but I kinda just brushed them off because there might not be children in the household. But this was kinda hard to get past, you know? And then I read Doug Wilson's To a Thousand Generations, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
And in there, he talked about the connection with circumcision, which was a sign of the old covenant. And now baptism being the new sign, why wouldn't we baptize our children if they circumcise their children? Or at least the boys. But man, it was just like this moment where I was like, "Oh, man." And we ended up switching to a church that does infant baptism. Like, it was like a big conviction for me. And I was baptized as an infant in the Catholic Church. My wife was baptized as an infant in the Catholic Church. So, yeah, man, it was just kinda like this eye-opening, like, okay, it took me a long time, but I think we're here, you know?
Yeah. Well, for me, like I said, I wasn't setting out to necessarily prove or disprove the validity of infant baptism. I wanted to which is what I've heard from a lot of Paedobaptist guys. Is like I was studying the covenants, and I read a ton of books, a bunch of old dead guys, but then I read Wilson's To a Thousand Generations as well. This really kind of all launched out of a conversation. We were at Grace Agenda in Moscow, and I was having a conversation with Jared Longshore, and he had just finished Case for the Christian Family, I think it's called, and I hadn't read it yet. It was out. I was still working through some stuff by Bunyan and Owen, and he was like, "Yeah, you should read that first." He's like, "But then read my book." And so I read it, and I came to John 15 passage that I had read multiple times regarding the vine and branches being removed from the vine, but yet that they were a part of the vine. And I'm preparing to preach through the book of Hebrews, and so we're quite a ways through Hebrews now. And so these things that I'm reading, and just because, like with John 15, as a Baptist, I would have just said, well, yeah, well, those branches, those people that were removed from the vine, they weren't ever genuinely Christians. To which a Paedobaptist would say, yes, we agree. But yet they were still part of the vine. They were still connected to the vine. They were still part of the covenant. And it's not. It was like a light bulb went off, and it's not like it's really that hard to see in the text. I had read the text multiple times, and it just didn't click for whatever reason. But now, as I was reading all of these other works and was looking at Scripture, it just clicked. It just fit into place, and so. Then I set out from there how to make sense of that, how to reconcile that within my own mind. And so it was, like I said, it was never really in relation specifically to baptism. It was about the covenant people of God. And then, of course, baptism, the sacraments came along with that as not an insignificant, but more of a secondary thing for me.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I always find it strange that, a lot of times Christian families that are more Baptist will say things like, it's not your parents' faith, right? Like you got to proclaim it yourself. But like what's wrong with just if you were raised in a Christian home, this was my parents' faith. Like this is my lineage. I am a Christian. Like, you compare it to like other religions like Muslim families. They're all Muslim, their kids are Muslim, like they know that they own it and it's like their family heritage. But we for some reason shy away from that because it could lead to people, falling away or, and we don't want to make it seem like they weren't actual Christians, but it's like, well, no, they were in the covenant family. They were just covenant breakers. Like that happened in Israel. All the boys were circumcised, right? Part of the covenant, but not everyone was a genuine believer. Like, why wouldn't it be the same for the church? You know?
Yeah, and that's really the crux of the argument that's being put forth by the apostle, who, whether it's Paul or whoever wrote Hebrews, is saying that the Israelites who fell in the wilderness, that didn't get to enter into the promised land, they fell because they didn't mix faith with the word of God, but yet they were the covenant people of God. And God being faithful to his covenant and his promises, persists with his people, but yet they fell, and they fell because they didn't believe. And so, not equating belonging to the covenant as being salvific in and of itself. It doesn't automatically say that you've been saved and you've been justified and you're being sanctified and that you will be glorified in heaven. I think that's hence the warnings of apostasy in the letter to the Hebrews, of these strong exhortations from the apostle to not fall away, to not abandon the faith, to put away the shadows, the old types, and embrace the substance, which is Christ, and cling to it in faith and belief. Thus, really serving as the proof of your saving faith.
Yeah, that's good. And your church, so you said you guys are having to like walk them through this new change. Like, how's that going?
it's been a challenge for sure, to say the least. I think a lot of the people that we have, when we all started together, most of us were at the previous church, and so they have, and I was an elder at that church as well, and so they've sat under and submitted to my teaching and the authority that was placed on me as an elder, and so they've come along in their theology. A lot of the things that I described earlier in terms of becoming Calvinistic in their soteriology, and some, not all, becoming moving to post mill and biblical patriarchy, and so they've come along with me. Uh, a little bit further behind. I came to those before they did, but and so this one is, hopefully, for most, is going to serve in the same way. Whether everybody comes along to adopt a paedobaptistic understanding of the covenant, it's not something that I'm requiring of them. We are a church that isn't currently, but is intending to enter into the CREC, which isn't really a denomination, but for lack of a better word, it's a communion or organization of churches that there's room. They leave room for both. Paedobaptistic churches and credo churches, and with some caveats, in terms of if you were to move your membership from a Baptist church to a Presbyterian church, then I think that they're seeking to practice a good deal of cooperation, to be ecumenical, to leave room for, to essentially say that we don't have to part ways. We don't have to split over this doctrine, and I don't think we should. I think that it's important, and we can discuss it. But one of the things, I was on a podcast just yesterday that I said, we really ought to just seek to fight things like abortion and all the gender mutilation stuff. We should put much more energy in fighting those types of things, and then when we get some of those things resolved by God's grace, then we can come back to the discussion about baptism. And that's not to make light of it. It's an important discussion, but it's easier for me to say on the side that I'm on now. I know it's not as easy for a Baptist to say that we don't have to part ways over this. We have, at least for now, tentatively lost 2 families from the church because of it. We've gained some others though, and I hope and pray that those 2 families will come back. But if they don't, they had our blessing when they left. I understood that it was a decision based upon conviction. Whether I agree with it or not, I understand where they are in that decision-making process, and I respect it, and love and pray for them. But yeah, for everyone else that remains, we're just really taking our time and moving through it slowly and gently, just to try to teach and lead, shepherd people well through that with a lot of grace, a lot of patience. And it's been hard for sure, but it's getting easier.
Hmm. Yeah. Like our church, although they do infant baptisms, they say it's not something to like divide over, like, so they'll even do dedication still, and and there's still believers baptisms, but they do practice infant too. And they just say it shouldn't be something to divide over. Same thing, like, but like I think 2 weeks ago in their service they had, we missed because we were sick, so I watched it from home online. They had one family do an infant baptism, and then a second family do just a dedication. And I was like, all right, that's pretty cool, I guess, like
Yeah.
making room for both. Like, but the overall denomination is, they come out of the RCA, so they're like more in the like Dutch Reformed world,
Yep.
and So they overall practice majority infant baptism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I understand the difficulties that come with that, but I respect, I appreciate the effort that goes into not dividing over such things.
Hmm. Yeah. And I agree, man. Like some of the stuff going on in the culture is a lot more important, right? Like we do have the stuff that's kind of like in-house kind of things, but then we have the stuff where it's like we're pushing back against, the gates of hell basically, right? Like we're on the forefront, we're fighting it. And so I think yeah, I think that does come of importance for sure. Us, we're in California over here, so it's a little crazier. Although our area is actually not too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't envy you. Uh, Over here in the Midwest, it's pretty nice. It's not perfect, but it's pretty nice.
Yeah. This area is like honestly not too bad, man. It's more of like the ag kind of part of California.
Yeah.
So it's we're probably like the flyover area of California, between LA and the Bay Area. So and Sacramento, I guess too. But but yeah, man. I appreciate you coming on. Was there anything else that you wanted to share just regarding that or
No, man. I think that yeah, I appreciate you wanting to take the time and hear from me. It's been an interesting process online. Certainly a lot of the Presbyterian guys on Twitter were pumped to hear the change, and some Baptist friends weren't, but have been cool about it, and don't want to cease to link up. And then others have just been making a lot of noise that I just, they're not here in my local context. They don't know what we're doing in the church and how we're trying to resolve these things. And, so guys that, if you're listening to this, I would just encourage you to not so dogmatically say that, a pastor like me has disqualified himself and needs to be fired. Let's not have so much loyalty necessarily to our tribe or our tradition. And if you come to those conclusions based solely upon scripture, then I guess carry on. And but as I have with some of them, I just I don't think that's the right way to go about it, in kind of attacking and accusing manner. So you'll get blocked, as some have. And so yeah, and just have a spirit of Christian brotherhood, and seek to encourage and exhort and edify one another. And again, like I said, we can disagree over administration of the sacraments, uh, but we don't have to part ways over it. So
amen. Yeah. Cool, man. Well, and everyone can follow you on Twitter. It seems like we're your most active or X,
yeah,
what you call it now.
yeah, whichever. I still call it Twitter, but yeah, you can find me there. It's just at Brandon Lansdown, or you can find the coffee there at Reformed Coffee. So pretty active
Cool.
there. Yep.
I'll make sure to put the links in the description. But appreciate you coming on. And yeah, have a good rest of the day, man. God bless.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron.
Mm.